On June 23rd, 2014, 60 days ago today, I went to buy my son a watch. And my kids will tell you they're right here. I don't buy my kids anything. My old man was one of the greatest guys he's had in this story. And one of the best things he did for me as a young kid, even though I had money in his pocket, was give me nothing. And I don't buy him anything. But Emmett started running, and he started to appreciate the pleasure and the love of running. And I said, if I get him a little watch, he'll use this watch and he'll enjoy running more, and it's just something I can do for him. Something like John before, father and daughter, father and son. So I walked down Fulton Street in Brooklyn, on top of the world, 6 o'clock, down into Macy's, back to the watch department, and shop for a watch somewhere around $30 to $40 or $50. I get to the counter, and I'm standing there, and a woman comes over, a black woman comes over, and I said, I'm looking for a sports watch for my son. And she said, let me just show you where the sports watch is. She took me over. And she had a certain air about her that was familiar to me, a certain decency and a calmness and a self-assuredness and a politeness that I hadn't seen in some time. She was a Southern woman. And she looked me in the eye the way that a lot of black folks don't look at white people. And she took me as an individual, and I was drawn to her. And she was drawn to me, but I didn't know why. And as I spoke to her, my mind floated back to 50 years before, to 1964, when a man came into the life of my family and my life in particular, my mother's life, named Pete Cowan, who came to take a job as an assistant to my mother to help run the ship of 10 kids and a demanding husband, and try to help out with everything that you have to do in a family, from cooking to shopping to gardening to everything else. And when he sat down for the interview, my mother gave him a cup of tea and a Thomas English muffin, and they started talking, and they were smoking 100 Chesterfields, 100. And he said, you know, I have to tell you before I start interviewing, I just got out of prison in Alabama. I took the life of a man. I got a 7-year sentence, and then I escaped out of prison. And they sent the killer dogs after me, and I killed all the killer dogs. I drowned them all, and I lived in a spot by a still, and I sold whiskey. And I turned myself in. I got brutalized and beaten, starved, and I got out of prison about 6 weeks ago, and I want to be in a place that's safe and comfortable. And he had a certain dignity and a certain honesty and a certain respect, and also a certain rebelliousness that my mother appreciated deeply. She was from Irish stock. Her family was from South Armagh, the hotbed of Irish rebellion for 1,200 years. And she saw something in him that was different. And she said, I'm conditionally going to hire you, got to talk to my husband first. And she went to my old man and she said, I interviewed a guy for the job. And he said, a guy? She said, yeah. And she said, you know, he was in prison, he killed a guy. He said, how many did you kill? She said, just one. He says, I want to give him the job. He deserves a second chance. My man says, yeah, give him a second chance someplace else, not here. So she said, Bill, I'm going to tell you, this is an unusual man. And he said, I'll trust your judgment. Give him the job. And so I'm standing at the counter, and I realized that there's something familiar about this woman. And so as I'm buying this little watch for Emmett, I say to her, I see you from the South, I can hear it. What part of the South are you from? And she says, I'm from Alabama. And I said, oh, Alabama. I said, whereabouts? She said, a small town that you never heard of, that nobody ever heard of. And I said, is it Thomasville? And she grabbed the counter and started to fall. And she said, how'd you know that? I said, I don't know how I know it, but I knew it. I said, what's your name? She said, my name is Arnetta. I said, I'll tell you, I knew a guy from Thomasville that I loved to the bottom of my heart, that had an impact on me. And in fact, probably is the reason why I'm here, because he loved nature and he took us to the woods hunting and fishing that I never would have done. And my old man was so great about it because he didn't like it. He said, go with Pete, he'll take it. And no jealousy, respect there. And I said his name was Pete Cowan. And she looked at me and she held onto that counter as though she was going to fall. And she said, I knew Pete well. And I said, when did he die? Because Pete was a wild man. He used to leave our house Friday night and he'd go to Club Alabama in Newark, and there was nothing but gambling and corn liquor and knives. And I didn't figure he'd live past probably 43 or 44. She said, no, he died in 2008. And I said, you know, Arnetta, I'm convinced that the reason why he lived is when my mother inspected his weaponry, his knives, she said, that's the shabbiest knife I ever saw. And she went down to Ray's Sporting Good and she bought an antler-handled knife and took it to the parish priest and said, I want you to bless this to keep Pete safe, that he uses in self-defense only. And he kept that knife and oiled that knife up and had it where you could get it out in a second. And he kept that knife right here. And he used to go Friday night with his pay, 2 packs of Chesterfields, and that knife. But we lost touch, and I felt bad. So I said, Arnetta, what I'm going to do, I'm going to come back tomorrow. I'm going to bring a picture of Pete. So I went home. I couldn't find a picture. I looked around, but I found a picture of Pete's mother who'd come to visit. And you can't see it, but I'll let you pass it around. She had come to see us in 1969. That's a picture of me and Pete's mother from 69. I was about 13 or 14. So she looked at the picture. She said, sure enough, there's Miss Lily. She said, you know, Sam, I have a number of one of Pete's nieces, and she wants you to call her. So I went home, I called the niece on the phone, we had a nice conversation, Elois, and she said, I heard you have a picture of my grandmother. I said, yeah. She said, can you snap it and text it to me? I said, fine. So I did. 2 minutes later, my phone rings. She says, Sam, I've seen that picture. I said, where'd you see it? She said, that picture was on my grandmother's bureau against her mirror for 21 years from the time she left your house until the time they put her in the grave. So I said, oh my God. So I said, maybe I'll come to Alabama. She said, you should, because I'll tell you why. And I never knew this. She said, every year we had 11 kids in our family. My father made $37 a week. And every year, at the end of August before school started, we get a trunk full of brand new clothes. Not shabby clothes, top-notch clothes. And it was that white woman from the north, Mrs. Gregory. If you come down here, you're going to meet some people. So I bought a ticket. No, I didn't buy a ticket. I called her the next day. I said, I can't go down there. She said, yes, you can. You better get down here, Sam. So she said, I spoke to my cousins. We never knew. She gave them clothes because they never told us, and we never told them, but they got clothes too. It turned out my mother used to take money, put it aside, because Pete, she was devoted to. She was connected to him. It was not touchy-feely. It was the gospel. He didn't have it. His family was her family. So I went down to Alabama. And I got the pictures to show you. He'll show you something here too. If you don't believe it, I went down from the 31st of July until August 4th. And I met his whole family. And we had a big barbecue. Yeah. Pass it around. So that's awesome. There was one thing that was bothering me when I was down there. I met everybody. But he had often talked about his spot. And he had a special spot when he escaped from prison, where he made his whiskey, and he sold it, and he hid in the woods. And when they gave me his wallet, which you see here, I opened up his wallet, and there was a little note inside. It said, go to the spot. Nobody knew where the spot was, except one niece that he had carried on his shoulders. When she was about 6 years old, he went out there to sit up high on a bench overlooking the lake with a little creek next to him. And so I got her to take me out there bushwhacking. It was something like going up to Erie Mine with Max Scheidler through the woods and everything. And we found this spot next to a tree, and there was the still like it was just built. And I sat down, and I reached under the bench where I was, and I felt something hard. And I found the knife that my mother gave me 50 years ago. And that's